The battle of the unbeatens in Tampa is going to be a wild one. That and more on today's Crossover Thursday episodes of Locked On Bucs and Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into a Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Bucs and Locked On Eagles, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listener view every single day. For those that don't know me, I am James Yarko, the host of Locked On Bucs. He is Louis DiBiase, host of Locked On Eagles. You can find us on Twitter. I am at JYarko_Bucs. He is at DiBiase LOE. And this Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Louis, you were saying right before we started, it's time for our annual Week 4 crossover because this seems to be the trend. But, the Bucs and Eagles, they keep squaring off because they keep winning divisions. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, James. I'm sick of seeing Tampa Bay in September. This has happened, 4 matchups in Tampa since 2023. They played week 3 that year in Tampa. They had to go to Tampa Bay in the wild card matchup. Then last year, they had to go to Tampa Bay in September, and now this year in 2025. So it's been 4 times in the last 3 seasons this has happened, and the Buccaneers have had the Eagles' number in pretty much all of those matchups outside of the Week 3 regular season game of 2023. So this was the big turning point of the Eagles season last year when they got blown out against the Buccaneers. So I'm wondering if that's going to be a similar kind of lesson they learned last year to this year after a Rams game that kind of woke them up. So it's a big-time matchup between, I think, 2 of the top 4 teams in the conference.
Yeah, 2 teams that were involved in games that had blocked field goals down the stretch, just came out on different sides of it. But Louis, as the visiting team, I defer to you. What is the biggest story right now for an Eagles team that honestly, they looked a little pedestrian on offense, but seem to have gotten some things on track there in the second half of week 3.
Pedestrian was an understatement for what that offense looked like in the first half. The second half, though, they were incredible. I mean, Jalen Hurts had over 200 yards passing, 40 yards on the ground, 4 total touchdowns. They finally just started playing aggressive and leaning on their passing game more. Before that, they were playing just far too conservative and scared. And it's kind of funny, James, what I was alluding to earlier. That Buccaneers loss last year kind of woke them up. It changed everything because the next week they had a bye week and they said, we have to change our offensive philosophy. We need to feature Saquon Barkley and lean into what we do best, which was running the football. They ran all the way to a Super Bowl. So this year, it's ironic they're playing Tampa Bay week 4 again because they're learning the opposite lesson where they've almost taken that approach too far and they've become almost too conservative in the name of being a run-first offense. But now it was like before that second half against the Rams, they were afraid to take any sort of chances. They were playing like they had no wide receivers instead of having maybe the best duo in the league in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and a great tight end in Dallas Goedert. So it's funny they head to Tampa Bay at the same time of year, almost learning the opposite lesson that this year what's required of them is, I think, completely different than last year. So I think they need to lean on their passing game more, and I'm going to be watching that against the Buccaneers for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I will talk about that a little bit later in the show. And I do have to give a disclaimer. Getting to Tampa a day earlier than normal, it's not going to help. It's going to be hot.
It's going to be over 100 degrees in this game. The Eagles are probably going to have to wear green like always. It's just, it feels like Groundhog's Day, man.
Yeah. And look, I know Philly's gotten a lot of criticism for how the offense looked over the course of the first 3 weeks. A.J. Brown was non-existent up until that second half against the Rams. But if you're a Bucs fan, do not get it twisted. Like, this is an offense that can break out for 30 points in the blink of an eye. So, obviously Saquon was a huge part of that last year. We'll talk more about Saquon in a little bit. I'm going to have to flip it over to the biggest story for the Buccaneers, and obviously that's going to be Mike Evans. Mike Evans leaving the game against the Jets with the hamstring injury. We saw the hamstring injury take him out last year for a little over a month. He tried to play through it, and I was honestly a little concerned that Mike, being who Mike is, he was going to try to play through. He knows how big this game is. He knows how important it is, just like the Ravens game last year. And I basically said, for the Bucs, they need to protect him from himself. Do not let him play this week. This Bucs team is so ravaged with injuries. The list of players that have missed time or are continuing to miss time: Tristan Wirfs, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Kalijah Cansey, Luke Gedeke, Cody Mauch, Jalen McMillan. You are talking about your right side of the line, your three of your top four receivers, your starting left tackle, and one of your best young defensive players. So this is, and I know Eagles fans are smiling. So they're like, yeah, well, we remember last year when we didn't have Lane Johnson and A.J. Brown and
Devontae Smith.
So, turnabout is fair play, but this injury to Evans comes at the worst time because we don't know the status of Chris Godwin right now. There's a chance, albeit a small one, there's a chance that Wirfs and Godwin make their season debuts in this game, but Godwin isn't going to be his normal self. So losing Mike Evans, the way this offense has struggled because of the protection, because of the defensive fronts that they faced, you needed that guy on the outside. You needed someone that could be that quick slant guy that could get those tough catches over the middle, that could move the sticks and extend drives. So losing Mike Evans for this one, let alone looking ahead to Seattle and San Francisco, best case scenario, he returns against the Lions. This is a really tough stretch to be without your number one.
And when you look at it, James, like these are two of the best four teams, I would say, in the NFC, both at 3-0. It's a really important game early on in the season if you're fighting for the 1 seed in the NFC. I think it's going to be between the Eagles, and that's why last week's win against the Rams was so important because they're going to be up there. I think you look at Green Bay as well and Detroit in the NFC North, but Tampa Bay, quietly has been, maybe not even quiet's the right word, but they've been one of the most consistent NFC teams over the last 5 to 6 years with Tom Brady and now Baker Mayfield. So they're up there. Like they are a threat to get that number 1 seed in the conference. So this is a really important game in September. It's kind of crazy how, at least from the Eagles perspective, they've had some huge matchups already. They had to play a divisional opponent week 1 in Dallas. They had to play the Chiefs again, the Rams, and now the Bucs. So the NFL certainly, they raised the stakes early on, at least for the Birds.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, Tampa started the same way with the divisional opponent. Then they get the Texans and the Jets. That's a little bit easier.
Well, that's a huge test for Tampa too. So, that's 2 of 4.
Yeah. And I know that Eagles fans and Bucs fans don't see eye to eye, but can we all take a collective moment to just kind of giggle a little bit that after this week, either the Chiefs or the Ravens are going to be 1-3?
1-3. That is crazy. Yeah.
That's hilarious to me.
That's the NFL. This is, James, one of, to me, like the craziest starts to an NFL season that I've ever seen. I mean, even the Eagles went last week. And what you were talking about, how both teams were dealing with like a blocked field goal on opposite ends. I've never seen that. And the Eagles had back-to-back blocked field goals to get that win. So it's been a crazy start to the season, but the Eagles are hoping that history does not repeat itself this Sunday. They have some demons they need to exercise in Tampa Bay because regardless of injuries or whatever's going on, the Bucs have had their number when the Eagles have to travel down to Florida. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited to talk about matchups for sure because it's a pretty even battle. Even with the injuries, I still think this is going to be a close game.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to go ahead and get to those key matchups that are going to decide the game. That is coming up next on a crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is where I always go to place all my parlays, my prop bets, my game bets for just about every sport. I got a group of buddies. We put together a 10-leg parlay every single Sunday because it just makes NFL Sundays that much better. The Bucs and Eagles square off at Raymond James Stadium in the only meeting of undefeated teams in week 4. The Bucs are 3.5-point home underdogs to the defending champion Eagles with an over-under 44.5. And the Eagles are looking to get just their second win against the Bucs since 2013. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. When you think game day, you might not think Wayfair, but you should, because Wayfair is the best kept secret for incredible and affordable game day finds. Wayfair has everything you need to get your space ready for the season, whether you're tailgating outdoors or cheering from your living room. What I love most is the selection. Wayfair has unique finds and options for every budget, so I can show off my team spirit without overspending. Deliveries fast, free, hassle-free, which is a lifesaver when you need something in time for kickoff. From outdoor essentials like folding chairs and patio heaters to indoor must-haves like TV stands and serveware, Wayfair has it all in one place. Wayfair is your trusted destination for all things game day, from coolers and grills to recliners and slow cookers. Shop, save, score today at Wayfair.com. That's Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you again for making Locked On Eagles and Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every single day. Louis, again, I will defer to you. What is the first of these key matchups that you're really honing in on in this must-win for two teams to take control of the NFC?
Yeah, so as you mentioned there, the Eagles have only won, once in Tampa Bay since 2013, so it's pretty bad. They need to figure out a way to finally beat this football team. The only time that they have won that game in Tampa Bay over the last, decade plus is 2023, when they had one specific player that they did not have. Like, if you just look at this era, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, when they've lost to Tampa Bay in 2021, in 2023, in 2024, what was the one common consistent variable or missing variable? It was A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown will play in this football game, just like he did in that win week 3 in 2023. And I think that's the key matchup, because, again, the lesson the Eagles learned against the Rams last week is that I think they took this conservative run-first approach way too far. Now, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts running the ball behind that elite offensive line is still going to be the focal point, the identity of this football team. But they were just scared to do anything. Like, if there was not a wide open pass, Jalen Hurts was just either checking it down or throwing it away. And they were, again, there's a difference between playing smart in the passing game and playing scared. So I think they need to do what they did in the second half. Give A.J. Brown opportunities. Even if he's not wide open, A.J. Brown is still open. So I think against that Tampa Bay secondary, I think Brown is the key in this matchup. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that the only time they beat Tampa, they did have number 11 on the field. So I'm looking at A.J. Brown, hopefully, to take over this football game. It's going to be hot. They're going to have to run the ball and hopefully tire this Tampa Bay defense out. But Brown, to me, is the key over anything.
Yeah, and look, Jamel Dean has surprised a lot of people. He is playing at an incredibly high level. Bucs fans are hoping that can continue, especially against somebody like A.J. Brown. But it won't just be AJ versus Jamel. He'll see Zion McCollum. He'll see Benjamin Morrison, who, he did a great job against Nico Collins in that Monday night game against the Houston Texans. Didn't allow a reception on any of the targets while defending him. So, it'll be a platoon effort like it always is with the Bucs defense. And, it's interesting you bring up AJ, because there's always this talk about Bowles versus Sirianni, Bowles versus Jalen Hurts. I want to talk about Todd Bowles versus Saquon Barkley. That is my key matchup for this Buccaneers defense. Since Bowles arrived in Tampa, he has faced Saquon 3 times. Those games resulted in 8 carries for 10 yards, 6 carries for 25 yards. And then last year, there was 10 carries for 84, but one of those was a 59-yard carry.
It was only the one big run. Yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't score on it. So you take that one away, it was 9 for 25. 0 rushing touchdowns for Saquon Barkley against the Todd Bowles Tampa defense. The Eagles offense, like we mentioned, hasn't looked so great over the first 3 games, but the Bucs have to do what they do best, and that's eliminate the run game. That's going to go a really long way. Philly, they look like they figured it out, but Bowles has a way of getting Jalen Hurts off of his game. So if he turns this one-dimensional and Hurts has to keep throwing the ball, that's when Bowles is going to be able to dial up the pressure that he always does against Philadelphia and force incompletions to get the Bucs defense off the field. And I was talking to somebody on my show yesterday, and he had mentioned early on, Hurts against the Bucs, he threw some interceptions. Lately, he's been throwing the ball away. So I looked into that a little bit more. Jalen Hurts against the Bucs there's only 3 teams that he has a worse completion percentage against. And there's no team outside of the NFC East that he's thrown more interceptions to. So if you eliminate the run game, which is Bucs are 5th in the NFL in yards per rush allowed, they're 1st in defensive rush success rate. Allow Bowles to do what he does against Jalen Hurts, and that's really where you're going to be able to gain some ground.
When you mentioned dialing up pressure, I think that's a key that I'm watching, because when Bowles has had success against Jalen Hurts, the Eagles have had no answer for his different pressure looks, his different blitz packages. And look, I thought Jalen figured it out in the Super Bowl against Kansas City when Spagnuolo sent a similar kind of blueprint at Jalen, and he figured it out. But this year, with new play caller Kevin Patullo, they've kind of gotten back to who they used to be, where they are struggling still with different pressure looks. So we'll see what happens. I think Jalen Hurts got much better year after year against the blitz, but it still is something this offense struggles with. They're inconsistent with. So Bowles has had their number, and I agree. I'm watching that a lot. And then, James, for me, like, if we're flipping the sides of the field here and talking about the Eagles defense against the Bucs offense, with Mike Evans out of this game, and you said Godwin there's no chance he's playing in this one?
No, there's a slight chance that he does make his debut in this one.
Even if he does, I don't think he's going to be heavily featured. He probably won't be 100%. Emeka Egbuka is an early Rookie of the Year favorite. If Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean can take him out of this football game, or at least limit him, I think that's super crucial, because Mike Evans not being in this football game, I think, makes Egbuka the number 1 guy in this offense. Quinyon Mitchell last week against Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, 6 targets, 3 catches allowed, just 20 yards, 0 touchdowns. So I would almost, and I don't know if Vic Fangio is going to do this because they're a very zone-heavy defense, but I would have Quinyon Mitchell shadow Emeka, kind of like he did Devontae Adams last week. So I think that's a key matchup, too, when we're talking about the other side of the field. That secondary against Egbuka and Baker Mayfield is going to be fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. And every week, I realize it's only been 3, but every week, Egbuka does something else.
That one-handed catch was unbelievable.
And what's crazy is that wasn't even as good as his bobbled catch that they didn't review inside the 2 minutes. But every week he does something where you're like, that's why he was a 1st-round pick for a team that was already loaded at wide receiver. When I'm looking at the Bucs offense against the Eagles defense, it's all about Bucky and Rashad against that run defense. And I said the same thing last week against the Jets. The Bucs didn't listen, but they have to get the run game going on offense just as much as they have to stop it on defense. The Eagles gave up over 160 yards to the Rams last week on the ground. They're 27th in yards allowed per rush, 24th in rush yards allowed per game. So we don't know about Tristan right now. That's another one that's kind of up in the air. But if he is able to play, that really opens things up for the Bucs offense as a whole. You would have your starting center, left guard, and left tackle all back where they belong. So those running lanes are going to start to clear out a little bit. What you cannot afford to do if you're the Buccaneers is drop Baker back 35 or 40 times in this game. Even if Wirfs is back, the offensive line is still missing pieces, and against a defense that can bring pressure from everywhere, much like what the Bucs can do, you're asking for trouble. So Bucky getting about 3.5 yards a carry on 1st down, 3 yards a carry on 2nd down. You have to stay stubborn and dedicated to the run game to wear down the Eagles defense and then open up play action. That's where you're going to see the opportunities for Emeka Egbuka and Shep, who has been absolutely fantastic this year. Ryan Miller, hopefully Chris Godwin. But if you're not running the ball effectively, those pass rushers, with the Eagles, they're just going to pin their ears back and they're going to go at you all day long.
I agree. James, I got to ask you, though, Desmond Watson, is he playing? The tush-push Terminator, the 464-pound nose tackles. When the Eagles are running the tush-push, is this something that the Buccaneers, they stopped the Eagles in the tush-push in the playoffs a couple years ago. Is this actually something the Eagles need to watch? I think the fans want to know.
I would say I'll give it about a 2% chance that he's elevated.
I love that they signed him, though, right when this matchup's coming up, and he just happens to pass all the conditioning tests. I'm like, this is interesting.
Well, but the thing is, he didn't practice with them. He has not practiced until, as we're recording this, in about 30 minutes from now.
Right.
He didn't practice during training camp. He was constantly just doing things to lose weight. So I don't think he's going to be game ready if they elevate him. So I think they have bigger fish to fry with their practice squad elevations for this one. Might have been a little bit of mind games of, we're
got us thinking for sure
a little bit. But, they got Vita Vea. They can stop the tush push, without Desmond Watson. But it would be something to keep an eye on if this is not the only meeting between these two teams this season. All right, what each team has to do to win this game. That is coming up next on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Eagles and Locked On Bucs. The NFL season is back, baby. And honestly, there is nothing better than being at the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It's really frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. Right now, you can grab tickets to this Bucs-Eagles showdown for under $180, and it's not just sports. I took my sons to a concert last week. I have another one coming up in October, but thanks to some unbeatable zone deals right there on the app where you're getting a great view at an even better deal. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday, and this crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Louis DiBiase, Locked On Eagles. James Jericho, Locked On Bucs. And Louis, taking a look at this game, what do the Eagles have to do to win this one?
Yeah, I think you mentioned a really key matchup with Todd Bowles going up against Kevin Patullo and Jalen Hurts. I think the football has to get out of Hurts' hands quicker than it was last week. And yeah, he a lot of the times has great protection, so he can hold on to the football, try to push it down the field vertically. He also likes to run and extend plays outside of structure, so that's why he holds on to it more. But I think they need to get the ball out quick, have answers for that pressure. And when I say get the ball out quick, I don't just mean a quick little check down to Saquon Barkley. Like, they need to dial things up over the middle of the field, the quick passing game, the short and intermediate areas that they just have really not been living in throwing the football. I think that's going to be key against Tampa Bay because they are going to dial things up. And if you don't have answers to that, if you don't have hot reads and your only antidote is Jalen Hurts just running around trying to make things happen, that's when things can go wrong like it has been the last couple of weeks. That's when mistakes can be made. So I really think that Jalen Hurts and Kevin Patullo having answers for Todd Bowles' different pressure packages is the key to this game, especially in that kind of heat. If Jalen Hurts is getting beat up, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, a lot of fans are going to remember Donovan McNabb puking on the sidelines wearing those dark green jerseys early in the year in that Tampa Heat. And look, it's pretty much the same thing for the Bucs. I can't believe how dead on you and I are in both of these keys, because it's like these two teams match up so well against each other, and they really are very similar in the way they approach these games. We started to see Josh Grizzard come into his own, but he's not working with a full deck. That's what we have yet to see. He's still not going to get it this week. So I already talked about the run game. So for the offense, it's about letting your pass catchers make their plays. Baker cannot sit in the pocket and wait for things to open up. You have to design plays to get the ball to Egbuka and Bucky and Shep in space and let them run. I would think that with Evans being out, we might start to see more usage out of Tez Johnson, the rookie wide receiver out of Oregon. He just hasn't been utilized this season. I think he has one target. So he's a player that would be a huge asset for this particular matchup. These Bucs receivers are beat up. So, when you look at that Eagles secondary, they're not fully healthy either. You have to exploit those matchups that you can and let the guys do the work in the second and the third levels of the defense. You don't need to draw up 40 and 50-yard bombs down the field. This needs to be death by 1,000 paper cuts to wear down this defense and steal a win at home.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that Eagles secondary too. That third cornerback spot has been very susceptible, unlike it was last year when they had Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Adoree Jackson has not had a great first 3 weeks of the season. Jacorian Bennett, who they traded for from the Raiders in August, has been pretty brutal as well when he's on the field. I don't know if they'll ever give Keely Ringo the chance I think he deserves, but that third cornerback spot, I know even with Evans out and maybe Godwin plays, maybe he doesn't, if they only have one true, like, legit target in the passing game, I still wonder when Egbuka is over there on the right-hand side, if it happens. That's still an area Baker Mayfield can pick on, like the Rams did and all the teams have been doing this year. So if there is like one weak spot the Eagles have been exploited at, it's that third corner spot. So naturally, I'm always watching that one as well in these matchups.
Yeah, and for the Bucs defensively, they have to stay disciplined. This has been a problem for some of these guys early in the season, and Philly just has too many weapons and a quarterback with legs that can make you pay if you're out of position. Servassier Dennis is one that has given up some huge plays in the first couple of weeks of the season because he didn't stay disciplined. So in a game without Kalijah Kancey, you're probably without Logan Hall. Yeah, he suffered a groin injury against the Jets. Those guys on either side of Vita Vea that have to fill in, they have to make sure that they're not letting Hurts bounce outside and pick up yards with his legs. They have to make sure that they're keeping Barkley in check. Greg Gaines, rookie Elijah Roberts, they both looked good against the Jets, but the Jets are not the Eagles. This is a different monster. So we're going to see if they can keep that going. It's the old Belichick mantra. Do your job. The defense is going to have to win this one for the Bucs, which means getting third down stops and getting one takeaway at the very least. They cannot afford mental mistakes like being out of position or costly penalties that are going to give the Eagles offense a second chance in one drive.
So, James, the Eagles, I think, are 3.5-point favorites on FanDuel, right?
Yep.
I think the Bucs cover that. I think this is going to be a 1 to 3 point game. So I think it's going to be a really close one. And like I said earlier in the show, like this is a massive matchup for both from a seeding perspective in the NFC. It's two of the top 4 teams in the conference. So both got to have it early on in the year, and it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be close. Right now, I'm leaning towards the Eagles covering.
Interesting. Okay.
I feel like this is going to be 24-20.
I'll just believe it when I see it in Tampa Bay, man. I know everything blueprint-wise on the field, actual contextualized analysis says the Eagles should win this game, but they just are not good in Tampa. So when they end it, I'll say I was wrong. But right now, I'm going to have the Bucs covering.
Yeah, I'll give my official prediction on my Friday show because we haven't seen the injury reports yet. You know, if Tristan plays, if Godwin plays, you know, I can talk myself into saying the Bucs win this game, but right now I'm definitely leaning Eagles, and I'm with you. I think it's close. I think it's less than a touchdown, but I do think they're probably looking at about a 4-point win. So, all right, well, that is going to do it for this crossover Thursday. Of course, check out Locked On Eagles with Louis DiBiase 5 days a week. You can check out Locked On Bucs with me 5 days a week. Follow on Twitter. Louis is at DiBiase LOE. I am at JYarko_Bucs. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy. And thank you all so much for joining us right here on a crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.